how is he still king?
Because he's the second richest man in the world. And he buys, he's bought at every health agency, not just WHO. He runs CEPI, he runs Gavi, he runs PATH. He is one of the biggest donors to CDC Foundation, to NIH Foundation. Fauci is on his board. And he funnels money to Fauci's pet projects. And then he's got a whole infrastructure of these industry front groups all over the world, hundreds and hundreds of them. The fact where he does surveillance on vaccine hesitancy, where he conducts psychological warfare and propaganda campaigns to bully and shame and discredit people, women who say that their child was injured by vaccines, to silence them. We know, and I know, that all of the media is owned by pharma. Because all of the advertising, up to 70% of the advertising on evening news programs are these vaccine companies, pharmaceutical companies. Anderson Cooper is sponsored by Pfizer, Aaron Burnett sponsored by Pfizer, Lester Holt sponsored by Merck. And they're dictating content, and they've turned those so-called journalists into pharmaceutical reps. But one place where the pharmaceutical companies cannot control the media are the independent media. In other words, public television, NPR, and The Guardian. And guess who is the biggest donor to those outlets? Bill Gates. His pharmaceutical partners are controlling all the commercial press, and he controls the public media. And, if you listen to NPR or public television or The Guardian, they'll tell you the truth about everything except vaccines. And that they would lie their heads off. There's no journalism happening anywhere. And Gates, those are just some of the examples of the insidious control. But his whole mentality is monopoly control, to control all the things that can hurt you and all the things that can help you. And his wealth, the more money he gives away, the richer that he gets. Since this crisis took place, this COVID crisis, he's gotten richer by about $1 billion a week. He's made 2 weeks ago, he made over $7 billion since this crisis began. Every time he gave away the money, and he doubled his wealth because he's using the philanthropy to benefit his investments. And, and that's what the Rockefellers did too. That's why these philanthropies were invented in many ways, because it gave the opportunity to wealthy people to hold on to wealth without being taxed, and then deploy it to promote their own interests. And, those could be philanthropic interests like libraries or whatever, but in many cases, it turns out to be your direct financial interest. I'm going to give me an example about how bad the mainstream press is. This is a little off topic. The Moderna vaccine.
Yes.
Which is the vaccine is the front runner. So, by the fact that COVID vaccines have been historically extremely dangerous because of a phenomenon known as pathogenic priming, they actually prime your system. You get the antibodies, and they can detect the antibodies, and they think, wow, we got a winner. But when you actually get challenged and exposed to the wild disease, instead of protecting you against the disease, they actually make you sicker. They prime your system to get really sick and die. And the animals, the ferrets die, the kids that they've given these to before die. So you want to make sure that any new vaccine that's produced is not going to do pathogenic priming. So you want to test it on animals first. Well, guess what? The Moderna vaccine, which Fauci has $500 million of our money in, and Gates's vaccine, and Gates has put a huge amount of money. And people should know this about Anthony Fauci. Fauci's exactly like Gates. By controlling Fauci, Gates can control science all across the globe. How is that? Fauci is one of the most powerful human beings on earth. Why is that? Because he controls all of the NIH funding to scientists. So he controls $6 billion of funding that he gives away every year. He controls, therefore, the outcomes of those studies. He controls what science will be done and what won't. He's not only controlling it because he's funding the science he wants to see done, and the scientists who are his buddies and who are going to produce outcomes that he likes. He can kill any other scientist's career because if a university, he's paying for all this university science. And if he says to the university, I don't like that guy who you're doing, who teaches there, and you're getting grants for him, I don't want to see those studies done because he's studying vaccines. If you continue to fund him, you're not going to see any NIH funding for the next 10 years. That's how he operates. He can shut down any study on Earth. And so between him and Gates, they're funding everything. And they can shut down, turn off, or allow any kind of study. And so he put $500 million into this Moderna study, which is our vaccine, and we wanted to be first in line. They got, in Gates' hometown, they did the study, and it's 45 people who they chose who are volunteers. And 15 of them got the high dose, 15 got the medium dose, and 15 got the low dose. Of the 15 who got the low dose, one of them got sick, horrendously sick, serious illness, which means hospitalization or medical intervention in their vernacular. And in the high dose group, 3 of them got sick. That's 20%. That vaccine should be canned right now. Any vaccine that makes 20% of people, even the high dose group, sick, because these people that it was giving they're giving the vaccine to, they're not normal Americans. These are like the Avengers. These are super people. These people, bullets don't hurt. The people that they allow into these vaccine trials never had an extra drink. They never smoke cigarettes. They don't have diabetes. They don't have obesity. They don't have arthritis. They've never had a seizure in their family ever in history. They have no history of autoimmune disease in their family, on and on and on. They do not look like an American. Something 54% of Americans have a chronic disease. Those are the people who are going to be getting the vaccine. Those are people who need it because they're the ones who will die from COVID. These people have zero risk from COVID. And they're the ones that even a bad vaccine is unlikely to hurt them, but 20% of them got sick. And in the other group, what is 1 in 15? It's like 3% or something. I don't know. Oh, 6%, right? It's a lot. You give that vaccine to 7 billion people, those are hundreds of millions of people are going to get sick or die. So, one of them is a guy called Ian Hayden, and you know him and I know him because he was on CNN day after day talking about how great he was for participating in the trial. And I give him that. He's a hero because he's doing something really dangerous. And purportedly for humanity, but he did have some other potential ulterior motives. He wants a career in public health. So he volunteered for this study, and he got incredibly sick. Within 12 hours of getting that vaccine, he spiked a fever of 103. He was vomiting uncontrollably. He had chills. He had body aches all over. He lost consciousness. Luckily, his girlfriend was there to catch him when he fell and to stop his head from hitting the floor. And they called the supervisor at Moderna, the clinical trial supervisor, and he said, call 911, get to a hospital immediately, and that's what he did. Then a week later, after he recovers, he goes on CNN. He goes into the green room at CNN, and he sits there for half an hour with Sanjay Gupta. And he tells Sanjay, who is a doctor, he confides in him, this is what happened to me. Holy cow, that vaccine made me so sick. He said, it was the sickest I've ever been in my life. That's a quote. And What happened next? Sanjay and him talk about it, and they say, let's not tell people about this. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's come on my show, but don't say that you got sick. Say that it was fine. And that's what he did. He went there and he lied to all of us. And Sanjay sat there and encouraged him to lie, told him not to talk about it. He's there to sell vaccines to people, and even if they're going to, injure, hospitalize 20% of the people who take them. He's there to lie about that to protect the pharmaceutical industry. So Sanjay Gupta is not alone. They have a Sanjay Gupta at every single network, including Fox, including ABC, NBC, and CBS.